Hope is here. The way to break free with your host, Angela Pedigo, will light a flame within you. Host Angela Pedigo is an author, speaker, and certified life recovery, grief, and joy restoration coach. Angela uses her own life experiences to help you navigate and guide you to success. She also has developed tools that incorporate her faith and her drive to overcome any obstacle in life. So please welcome the host of The Way to Break Free, Angela Pedigo.
Welcome, everybody, to The Way to Break Free. I'm your host, Angie Pedigo. I'm so glad you could join us today. I have a very special guest today, Miss Brandy Huntsman. Welcome to the show, Brandy. Brandy is a good friend of mine. We have gotten to know each other. We were talking about this before the show today, how long it's been. It's been about 2.5 years or so now. And I've just gotten to know her, watch her grow, and I wish you guys could have seen her before and now. Like, she just has this glow and this beam about her, so special. So I can't wait for you guys to learn about Brandy today. So Brandy, thanks for coming on.
Happy to be here.
Tell them a little bit about you.
Okay, I am married, have 2 kids, 3 stepkids. We are a blended family.
Yeah.
Basically, that's been my life, is mom life. Other than I do work and stuff like that. So
yeah. Brandy has she's experienced a lot of things in her life and has overcome a whole lot of stuff. And you know, we were kind of talking about that too before we went live today, about how we met. You know, that was kind of interesting. So you can tell us a little bit about that.
So I actually, when I met you and we came to, counseling, I didn't come for me.
Yeah.
I came for a friend. She had been through some things, and her mother was actually the one that found the place.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually came for support for her. Just ended up being that God led that direction of me being there and me learning some things while I was there. So I decided to go through the program. So,
yeah. We don't really know sometimes that we're in need of something when we're in the middle of it.
Oh, that's very true. Very true. Yeah. No. But, God opens doors in ways that, we don't always think it's going to happen, but it happens. So
He does. And when you first came there, I guess when we first started talking about, working on some things, it kind of started out from a grief standpoint, would you say?
Right. So 2019, I actually lost both parents. Lost my dad in August of 2019. He passed away from a heart attack. He was in a coma for 20 days, and he ended up passing away. And then my mother had been actually battling breast cancer for 6 years at that point. And November 22nd of 2019, she went home to be with the Lord. So it was kind of one of those trying times for me. I was kind of so busy taking care of my mom during that time that I think the grief hadn't actually set in yet. But probably the beginning of 2020 is when things really shifted, and I started to really understand that grief was starting to set in, and it became very hard for me, and I tried to deal with it on my own, and it didn't work very well. So
how was that for you? You're sitting there taking care of your mom, and obviously for several years, it's hard on caregivers.
It is.
Sometimes I think in the middle of what the patient's going through, the person who has the illness,
right,
it's easy for the caregiver's needs to get overshadowed too.
Right.
Like we're not focusing on that in that moment. We just keep going because it's just what you have to do. But that weight didn't hit until later. And then in the midst of that, I guess you guys didn't expect this to happen with your dad.
No, actually we didn't. That was kind of a shock, and it happened so quickly. And we were a family that was very close knit. I guess everybody would say that you don't really think it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And when it does, it can be a real shock. But yeah, during that time, you become so focused on the caregiving part of it itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think you almost have like an out of body experience in a way. You become in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
And but once it all happened the way that it did, things just shifted in me that weren't for the best.
Yeah.
If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I went into a very dark place for a long time, but then the doors were opened that led me to counseling, and it's been a complete and total change for me. And I couldn't recommend it more. So
yeah. Well, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there too that can relate to that dark place.
Right.
What was that like for you?
Honestly, I think it was more of a I guess a mindset of I felt like I needed somebody to talk to that knew what I was going through, but internally I felt like nobody understood what I was going through.
How would you deal with that time?
How did I deal with it? Oh my goodness. Seclusion. Basically just withdrawing into myself, honestly. It also set a lot of anger up in ways that, I grew up as an angry kid for other reasons. However, during this time of dealing with, the death of both parents and things like that, I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to be able to deal with it, but I've always been that person of thinking I have to deal with it myself. How do I overcome this in my own way? And it just was one of those situations where it wasn't, I knew I had to have the help. I knew I needed to seek somebody that was going to be able to walk me through those steps where I could get to a point of, because it was first anger and not really understanding, to I knew I was grieving, but truly knowing how to handle that grief was the problem.
We do get in the cycles of grief. There's those 5 cycles of grief. There's the bargaining stage, and there is the denial stage, and the anger, and the depression.
Yes.
And it's like, I see people sometimes they cycle through those. They just, it might be anger this season, but then it shifts to this or this. And until they get to that place of acceptance, and you can grieve for a long time.
Oh, yes.
If you don't work through that.
Right. Properly learn how to manage it and handle it. And it, so from 2020 up until, I came to you for counseling and stuff, it was a really dark period. I mean, there were other things that was going on, that were some changes in the home and things like that. And it, character being attacked, trying to learn how to handle the grief process and learning how to manage these new things that were happening and things like that. I wasn't handling it the way that I should be handling it. And I was in desperation, basically. I needed somebody or God himself to step in and show me what I needed to do to get through this process. Not knowing how to handle it put me in a place of, like I said, seclusion. However, there was just a darkness there that I felt like I wasn't climbing out of. And I knew that there had to be something different in the midst of that.
You were talking about feeling angry. Was that anger just anger in general, or were you angry at God? You were talking about, you needed somebody or God to step in.
Right.
Because a lot of people get angry at God when grief.
That's kind of the funny thing is, I grew up in a very Christian home. We were taught the Bible from the time I can remember being little, up until, my parents passed away. We were always in church. I've always believed in God. To say that I wasn't angry with God would not be honest. Because the kind of mother that I had was a firm believer. there was nothing that the woman spoke of. There was nothing that she did that she didn't pray about first.
Mm-hmm.
She encouraged you when it comes to the Bible, things like that. And for me, it was why.
Mm-hmm.
She prayed, she asked, she begged,
Mm-hmm.
for God to take this from her. And I was torn between the God has purposes
Mm-hmm.
for what's going on. Do I believe God gave her the cancer? I don't. Because we are humans and we live in a human world.
Oh, yes.
But for me, it was, why didn't you heal her?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I remember going through a period of time after that where I questioned God a lot, even his existence. But then there was a point where it was like, I walked out on my front porch and I just sat and I looked and I watched at absolutely nothing but what was going on around me. And I remember that still small voice going, can you look out there and say that there's no God?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it changed. It was like, okay, Lord, granted, I'm going to give that one to you, but that's where I knew that the change had to, and I knew that it had to be with God, because I wasn't going to be pulled out of where I was at without him. So,
as you're sitting there talking about that, I heard a sermon one time, and I can't remember who was preaching it, but he made the comment that when we pray and we ask God to heal our loved ones, and that healing in our eyes, that healing doesn't come, it just didn't come the way that we thought he would heal.
Yeah.
But that if they pass on, that it was the ultimate healing.
Yes.
Like the ultimate healing. And I can remember when talking about cancer, when my dad passed away and he had cancer, and it was like watching it literally eat his body from the inside out, and cancer is a beast. If nobody has I don't know how a family who hasn't been affected by that, but if you watching them suffer in such a way. I remember when he passed, they played that song. I didn't know it was coming. It was at the funeral home, and they played that song, my chains are gone, I've been set free.
Yes.
And I was like, he has.
Yes.
He has been set free. Like, there's no way in this world I would have asked him to come back in that body that he has, in the suffering.
Right.
But to know, too, even if it wasn't suffering, it was quick, you know? You think about the things that we go through in this life, the struggles, the heartaches, the anxiety moments, the anger, like all the things that we deal with, that when they're in a paradise, it's like no more.
Right.
To me, paradise would be a nice trip to Hawaii or something, that with a one-way ticket, you don't have to come back, but it's kind of like that forever vacation,
And that's funny, because I don't remember a time, even though all of the things that she went through, the torture and the brutalness of cancer, I don't remember her one time asking God why.
Yeah.
I don't remember her one time begging. She asked God to take it, but at the same time, the faith never wavered. It never wavered. Even to her last breath, that she knew where she was going. And that's what, for me, was like, okay, I can't be that child, that learned this my whole life and not believe, because there was a faith in her that was like, you can't listen to it and you can't hear her and not believe that she truly believes. And honestly, she believes what she's saying, and that's just because she believes that he was going, whether she's here or not.
She's a winner either way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny, because we had a song that we kind of picked out for her. It was called Champion.
Oh.
And it was about, fighting battles, and no matter what, in the end, she was still going to be victorious, because she was going to be with the Father, and that's where she's at, and I'm very thankful for that. I'm thankful for what I grew up learning and things like that. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did all of that, seeing her faith, I'm assuming that helped you carry through that?
Yeah, it did. It did. And after everything happened the way that it did and stuff, like I said, there was some changes within the home. and they were kind of hard to deal with, but
yeah. You had a lot of moving parts.
Right.
We'll pick up from there when we come back after the break.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Brandy, I want to circle back to what we were talking about before the break. You're in the midst of, like, the world doesn't stop when we're grieving. It just doesn't. And sometimes we wish it would, so that we can just like marinate through this and heal, and it doesn't. We still have to go on with life. But life wasn't so kind to you after that.
So we had some changes within our home that happened at the beginning of 2020. And it was just a thing of, trying to adapt to new things, trying to adapt to being, I don't know, like things that I wasn't used to dealing with, I guess you should say. However, during that time, there was a lot of me as a person. I want to fix things. And I guess you could call that control, in a way. I want to fix a situation. I don't handle drama well. I don't handle things, being out of hand or whatever. Because I want to step in and I want to fix those things. And I want to be the caretaker. I want to be the nurturer. I want to do the things that I think is going to help.
Which is what moms do.
Right. However, during that time, though, trying to deal with the grief and trying to deal with these new things that were going on, it wasn't working very well for me. I was actually kind of in a position where, I think I explained this earlier. I felt like I was in a glass box, screaming from the inside with the box being soundproof to the outside. Begging and wanting things to take place to change. And they weren't changing. It got very dark for me personally, to the point of anxiety and depression set in so bad that I felt like it was a hole that I couldn't crawl out of. Trying to deal with the grief and trying to deal with these situations almost put me in a place of I wanted to run away. However, you don't stop being a mom, you don't stop being a wife, and you don't stop being doing things in everyday life. So during that time, I tried to handle things by myself the best way I knew how. Tried to be the best I could be for everybody. But I remember getting to a point where God was the only thing I had that I could seek.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember saying in a prayer one time, I was like, God, I don't know what to do anymore. Like, I am so lost. I don't know where to begin. I don't know where to take the steps to do what needs to be done to make these situations right. And I remember my first prayer was, Lord, if there are people or things that are in my life, including myself, that are not meant for me, if there's things I'm doing that are not meant for me, I need you to step in and I need you to vividly show it to me.
Ooh. Things change when we start praying like David. Search me, oh God.
Yes.
Ooh.
And that's the one thing that it took, was saying that for me, honestly, was God saying, okay, you asked for it. Because those control things that I took, that I had issues with, wasn't because I was trying to manipulate people. It was just that I think I can fix it better. And God says, no, not better than me. You know, so, so that was one of those things where I stopped and I said, God, if whatever it is, show me, you know, and if it's other people, if it's things that I'm doing, you know, or whatever, I need you to have those people step out of my life so that I can get to a point where I can climb out of this dark pit that I'm in, you know.
I got a question for you. Do you think you would have ever gotten to the place where you would relinquish control of fixing it, or fixing it the way you see best, if you hadn't have gotten that low in that darkest of dark spot? Like,
I don't think so. To be honest, you know, that when somebody says, you know, it takes a person hitting rock bottom to really see, that can be in any situation. Some people it's drugs and alcohol. Some people it's other things. You know, for me, it was childhood trauma of chaos. And that's why I so deeply needed to fix things. So therefore, you know, it was like I had to be in that point of where I felt completely out of control. And I remember making the statement, sometimes when you feel completely out of control, you grasp for the things that you can control.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where I was at. So it came down to, you know, I had to hit that spot where...
I'm so glad you brought that up. When we can't control certain things, we start trying to control the things that we can.
Yep.
Elaborate on that a little bit. What was that like for you?
So for me, it was, and this is going to sound silly, for me it was cleaning my house.
Oh, yes, I get that.
For me, it was reading books. For me, it was finding time to be away from everybody and everything. Those were things I felt I could control. Seclusion. Was that okay? No, because I wasn't healing anything. I was just removing myself from what I thought the chaos was. And internally, it was like, what are you fixing besides just hiding in a closet somewhere, you know?
You were kind of building your own isolation.
Yes.
You didn't want to be in the glass box,
right? But
you...
Yeah,
we box ourselves in sometimes.
I'm one of those people where, you know, everybody wants to be heard. You know, you want, when you're trying to explain yourself to somebody, you so desperately feel that you need to get them to understand. However, sometimes, you know, you got to just kind of step back and let God do his work. And sometimes when you speak, maybe right in that moment, things are not you don't feel like you're being understood, but sometimes God's setting in some motions, you know, that is helping open those doors for you to be understood, you know, so.
Yes, I read a book one time. You was talking about reading books that really described that that behavior pattern, or whatever you want to call it, but kind of like as a God complex.
Yes.
You know, God is here. The problem is here.
Right.
We can see it. We can see a solution to it, or we want to try to head it off. So we run in to like save this situation rather than going to him and letting him do it. He's already lining things up, but sometimes we get in his way.
Yeah.
Sometimes we absolutely get in his way.
Right. And I think that was my biggest problem, right? Is that I felt like nobody could do it the way I did it. Nobody could fix it the way I could fix it, and that's when God kind of steps in and goes, I don't know, I think I can handle it better than you can, but, I mean, it was one of those situations, like I said, that is, I don't want to go back to that. And I knew I had to get out of it because it wasn't just it was such a darkness that, like, I know a lot of people that I've known throughout the years and things like that says, that depression and anxiety isn't really a thing. It's just their mindset. Depression is very real.
It is very real.
Anxiety is very real. It even got to the point that I'm going to say 3 years ago, I was having severe physical issues and was wearing heart monitors, going back and forth to the doctor because I was having heart flutters. And like, there were physical attributes to that depression that were physically coming forward, and losing weight to the point that, I wasn't wanting to eat or anything else. And it became a pretty bad situation. And it wasn't anybody else's fault. It wasn't anything bad, that was happening or anything like that to me personally. It was more of the darkness that was going on inside of my head and my heart was far beyond what it had gotten to its I guess breaking point by then. So
well, you said it best, an emotional rock bottom. So you're sitting on your porch, you're looking out at everything, and you see God's saying, revealing himself to you, basically.
Right.
That he's real. How can all this be?
Right.
What changed for you from that point forward? What did that start the motion of?
So from that point forward was a thing of, I remember picking up my Bible and I remember thinking to myself, you're not going to learn much if you don't open it and read it.
Yes.
So I started from that point, now I didn't do it every day. I didn't do it weekly, but I would start getting in that pattern of opening up the Bible, and whether it be in a certain book or chapter starting out or just opening it up to wherever it flopped open, I would start reading, something out of it. And then, like I said, there come a point in time where I think I got to a point where, okay, Lord, I need somebody to talk to, and our family was pretty big, but losing your parents as quickly as we did or whatever, like, it kind of feels like the whole family kind of got shattered. But at that point I knew I needed somebody or somebody, or something to take place. So
yeah, something to be a transition point.
Right.
Well, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
We're back from the break, and Brandy, we are up to the point where you knew that you needed to talk to somebody.
Yes.
But ironically, you ended up
Yes.
in a place with,
Right.
with a friend who we were encouraging to go talk to somebody.
Right.
What was that like for you? Like when you decided, okay, I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to embrace trying to walk through some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Through that, did you pick up tools? Like how did that work for you?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I remember, well, it's been 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's been several programs. However, I think for me, it was one, looking at yourself, looking within, finding out like the childhood traumas, the things that you've held on to, unforgivenesses, also setting healthy boundaries, broken princess. That was a big one. For me, Broken Princess was it was a deep dive, almost scary.
Yeah, that program is powerful.
Yes. However, taking each one of those things, for me, it was always about being a people pleaser. For people who have met me, they may say, no, she ain't either, don't even. But inside, I want to be, I guess you could say I want to be good for people, almost to the point of a fault where I don't always think about myself in the midst of it, because I want to make sure everybody else is happy, whether it be my husband, my kids, whoever. But setting healthy boundaries of where I can also take the time out for me, heal that inner child and that person that I want to be, and also saying, you know what, things are too far. We can't, that's not a place I'm willing to go. That's not a conversation I'm willing to have. Things like that, because starting out, I don't think I was in the very best headspace when we started counseling. But I knew when I started that if I didn't take the tools that I was learning and I didn't actively apply them, there was absolutely no purpose in me being there. So yeah, when we did Broken Princess, and we broke down the castle and all that stuff, we found out, one, I cannot draw. Two, taking those rooms and actually visualizing that and where you're at in that moment in time was almost a brutal thing to go through, but at the same time, it breaks something.
The hold.
Yes, it breaks something within you, and it can be so freeing to realize that. And then going back and looking at those rooms after you go through the program and seeing the walls that are no longer cracked and the blossoms, and it was an amazing experience, to be honest with you.
That is my favorite part of that program.
Yes.
Is when, and I've had people on here talk about Broken Princess. Actually, the one who wrote the Broken Princess program, she's been on the show before. And my favorite part in this whole program is being able to lay all of those drawings out, and you see from the beginning to the end how you have morphed, like this darkness has turned into this bright light at the end. And it is so beautiful because you have a visual to look at the transformation. You know what you feel. You can explain it to people, but you can whip them drawings out and it's just like, here, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So and going through the unforgiveness or having unforgiveness, that was very hard for me. And writing down the things, the people that you can remember, and things like that. For me, it was, I didn't really think in the midst of that some of those people I still held unforgiveness towards, because it was kind of like an out of sight, out of mind type thing,
Yes.
However, I learned in those processes that forgiveness is not a one-time thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's daily, it's hour by hour, it's minute by minute. And it's funny how sometimes when you think you've achieved it, that the enemy can step in and put a little twinge of something here or there, and you're doing it again. For me, I think that was one of the hardest parts, because in the midst of one of those, it was attack on my character, is who I am as a person. I'm far from perfect, honestly. But what I am when it comes to my family, being a mom and things like that, I think I hold a pride in that, because I feel like I am. That's the one thing in my life that I can say I'm good at, is being a mom and being,
it's your identity.
I have a, I guess you could say there's a special place in my heart for young people, due to the fact that I can look at them and I can see bits of myself. And then I want, you kind of want to rescue in that, in some things. But like for me, it's the young people. And, when my character is attacked and things like that, like, I don't know, that was one of the hardest ones for me. But at the same time, I remember God saying, pray for your enemies. And that was hard. That was very hard. Very hard. But yeah. So when I started that, there's so many different things that I can say that no longer are an issue, that it's like living a completely different mindset. And I'm so, so grateful for it. So grateful for it.
People think when people feel that anger inside and you say, oh, you got to pray for your enemies. And they're like, what are you talking? What do you mean? Like, yeah, pray something bad happens or something, And the response I get from people a lot of times, well, I don't mean it. Like, I won't mean that. It doesn't matter.
Right.
You won't start out meaning it. Like, you won't start out praying for them. Your heart posture might not even be in the right spot when you start.
Exactly. Yep.
But if you commit to do it anyway, each time you do, you're breaking another layer of ground. You're breaking another layer of ground. And eventually you're going to get down some good dirt where those prayers are going to start sinking in. They're actually going to want them to thrive and do better. And what it's doing is it's changing your heart posture in the process. And, God can do something with that.
Yes, definitely.
You mentioned about the grief that you were feeling, the things that you were dealing with, the changes in the home, attacks on character, all these things. But you said when you started healing that inner child, do you feel like that all the things that you were dealing with at that time were maybe more difficult or magnified because of the things you hadn't dealt with as a child yet?
Yes.
See, honestly, I think people don't realize that what I'm experiencing today is at the level it is today because I've got stuff shoved down in a bag that I've never dealt with, or I'm just refusing to look at. And we think we're okay.
Right.
But then we wonder why we can't get over something that we're dealing with right now.
Well, and here's my thing on the importance of counseling. I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up where the Bible was spoken all the time. But I also grew up in a home where things weren't talked about. You could be silenced very quickly. And it wasn't because they were being rude or being, mean or anything like that. But there were things that we should have been able to talk about. Like now with my kids, I want them to know, I don't care how bad it is. I don't care how ugly the situation looks. I need you to talk to me about it. Because when you're silenced, or you act like certain things didn't happen because it no longer needs to be talked about, you grow up to be the adult that does the very same thing. And that's not the way that I think that my kids need to walk into their adulthood. They need to be able to talk and deal with those things the proper way.
Well, you just explaining that sounds like how you were describing you were feeling in that glass box.
Yes.
Like what you dealing with it the same way you were taught to deal with it. And that was a generational thing too. Back
Right.
then, people didn't talk about their feelings. You were
Yes.
told not to. You were considered, somehow weak or less than or whatever,
Right.
or you just didn't talk about those things,
Mhm.
and because nobody really knew what to do with it if you did,
Right.
and yeah, there's a lot of people still overcoming
Yes.
generational stuff like that.
Right.
And it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. If we say that on the show once, we've said it many times.
Yeah.
It's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to stay that way.
Right.
We have a responsibility to heal.
Yes.
And not healing doesn't make you any tougher or any stronger.
Right.
You don't even really realize how it's affecting you until you start getting into that stuff.
Right.
Do you regret any of the work that you've done?
No, absolutely not. Being from, a standpoint of being in that dark place, things that happened as a child that, were, let's say it this way, out of my hands, things that would happen to me that should not happen to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I was not the only one
Mm-hmm.
in my family that dealt with it. It's getting to the nitty gritty of things
Mm-hmm.
and pinpointing that down into even the nastiest places that you can dig within, that no, I don't regret a bit of it. And I highly, highly recommend that if you're in that position and you're in that rock bottom of your life, seek the help and seek it. I mean, God is the only thing, number one, that's going to be the ultimate healer.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people and there are places out there that genuinely want to help, that want to.
Yes. What is it? What do you feel like a person's mindset needs to be going into when you decide that I'm going to go get help? What kind of mindset do you need for it to be successful?
For me, it was I can't not pay attention to what's being said. I've known individuals that went through therapy and basically or counseling that have week to week is just a place to go into, just a vent. I know you're offered tools in those situations, just like I was offered tools. Your mindset has to be that no matter how you're feeling in that moment, whether you want to do it or you don't want to do it, you have to, make the time. I remember doing the homeworks at home. Like I started out doing it as soon as I got home in the evening, or I would do it right before I went to bed. But you have to have the mindset of, I've got to do it. It's got to be done. Because if you really want the healing and you really want to, like I said, climb out of that hole, you've got to apply them.
And you said something earlier that's key about being willing to look inwardly.
Yes.
With a lot of times people won't get help because they don't want to take that inward look and they're afraid of what they're going to find in there. But there's so much freedom in it. And we're going to talk about that when we come back right after the break.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
All
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
We are at the good part, Brandy. The freedom part.
Right.
So, freedom. That is a powerful word.
Yes, very much so.
Do you feel like you got freedom from some
Absolutely.
things?
Yes. We were just discussing the difference from 2 years ago to now.
Literally, if I had pictures of her, y'all, I would show you from the day I met you until today, physically even, does not even look like the same person. There's a dark cloud that left. Like there's a,
Yes.
yeah, you just glow. You glow. When I look at you, I just feel this beautiful soul.
Oh,
and
thank
you literally glow. But watching you take that freedom and build this powerful relationship with God,
Yeah.
and like knowing He speaks to you,
Yes.
and like what is life like for you today?
Today, oh my goodness, there's like freedom is the peace I feel today cannot compare to anything. And I remember saying that from the beginning. I just want peace. I just want to be able to breathe. Today, I can breathe. I can share that with other people. Taking that past, taking those hurts, taking that grief, and applying that to people that I run into on a daily basis. Sometimes you don't even have to say anything spiritual. Sometimes you just need a smile. Sometimes you just need a hug. You know, sometimes you just need to say, you look beautiful today. It's those simple things that can literally take something within somebody else and spark something that can change a whole atmosphere and an attitude for somebody. And for me, that's the thing. There's a boldness there that 10 years ago, 2 years ago, probably would have never even existed because I was worried about what people thought. I was worried about the things that people may say about me. Today, it's more of, what if I don't?
Ooh.
What if I don't speak that thing that I feel the Holy Spirit leading me to speak?
Yes.
What if I don't pray for that person in the midst of what they're going through? What if? And I remember praying one day, and I was praying for my family. And I said, Lord, use me to speak the right words. But sometimes family doesn't listen to family. So I said, Lord, just, if I don't care who it is, as long as it's somebody that will be put in their paths today, that may just spark something inside of each one of them that will cause them to think about you. And I remember praying for a certain individual and that's not in the family. And I said, Lord, use me. But if I'm not the one, then, and I remember the Holy Spirit saying, why aren't you the one?
Oh.
And of course, that's one of those situations where you're kind of like, just, okay, yes, sir. But at the same time, like I stop and I go, you know what? I have to say it. Like, and there's no fear in that anymore. There's no agenda behind it. There's no pushing to make you believe. It's more of one of those situations where if I can show you through mere kindness and the love of Jesus through me, absolutely, let's do it. So that's what we do. We just do it.
It's a holy boldness
It
of
is.
kindness.
It is.
And you're sitting here describing if it's a word, if it's a kind word or an acknowledgement or hey, or you look beautiful today, or
Right.
you are taking what you didn't have,
Yeah.
an art which is not being seen in the glass box, and you're saying I see you.
Right.
Every time you do that, you're saying I see you.
Right.
And think of what that would have done for you.
Yes.
In the glass box days.
Right. And that that's kind of the funny part about it, is that when I look back on it now, it probably wasn't that I wasn't seen.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It was
because we build our own isolation.
Yes. It was more of my mindset was nobody hears me. I'm begging. But at the same time, if I would have crawled out of myself long enough.
Oh, that's powerful.
Then it would have been different.
We got to crawl out of ourselves.
Yes, sometimes you have to literally you have to lay self down.
Yes.
Daily, right?
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, in that situation, it was more like if I believe today that if I would have just put self down and crawled out of that and maybe paid attention to certain things, but it took me, like I said, getting to rock bottom to be who I am today. And does that make me perfect? No. Does that mean that I don't screw up? No. I screw up all the time,
Yes.
But at the same time, I have a God.
Yes.
And a Savior that died on the cross that takes those little bitty mishaps and mess ups. And on top of that, for anybody out there who's in real bad situations, He wants to meet you in the middle of that mess.
Oh, yes.
It doesn't matter how bad it is. He left the 99 to come find you. And that is the main thing that I want people to know today.
Yes.
You have to understand, He doesn't care what it is. He doesn't care how bad you are. He wants to meet you in the middle of it.
Absolutely. Whoo, she's done brought me to tears. That is so powerful. And to know that you're being that advocate for healing, for help, for freedom, for Jesus, for others. Brandy, that just blesses me so much. You have blessed me so much.
Thank you. Thank you for all you have done.
He did it. You and him. I just got to watch, and it was beautiful. I'm so grateful for that. I want to thank you for being on the show today and for everything that you've shared. I want to thank Bold Brave TV for hosting The Way to Break Free. If you're out there and you're struggling in any way, reach out and get help. If it's something you want to coach about, if you're looking for your joy, you're trying to build your faith walk with God, reach out, go to my website, apministry.net, and see if there's something on there for you. There's a lot of offerings there. And if not, then we'll have a conversation. I'll try to point you in the direction that you need to go. But reach out to someone and get help, because freedom is what waits on the other side of that. Thank you guys for joining us today. I hope you will like, subscribe, and follow along so that you'll be notified each week when we go live. And we'll see you next time.
This has been The Way to Break Free with your host, Angela Pedigo. The one thing Angela attributes her personal victories to is her relationship with God and her deep faith. Tune in each week and hear stories and testimonies of people in personal and professional trenches and how they overcome them with their own faith in God. The Way to Break Free has something for everyone, everywhere. Right here, Wednesdays, noon Eastern on the Bold Brave TV.